Well, we do have a quorum. I don't know if you wanted to start without Gerard. Depends on how you all feel.
Fine with that. I mean, we're really just voting, right?
Yeah, if you have any comments on that variance decision.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
No, I looked through the doc that you sent today, and I don't have any comments on it.
okay.
I'm fine with it.
We may, I'm sure the applicant would probably prefer to have more members vote just in case, but I'm pretty confident here that we're where we're headed. So you might want to just give Gerard a few more minutes. I know we have a public hearing starting right at 6, so want to give him.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'll give it another 5 minutes or so.
Okay. Oh, there he is. Okay.
Hello, folks. How's it going?
Good, and you?
Good.
Good.
Yeah. So is the applicant here for the 50, or are we just going to review the minutes? I mean, the decision.
I don't know that they are going to come or not. Yeah.
Why don't you bring up the decision on the screen, Valerie? We can.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Let's do right.
I shared my screen the other night at a meeting, and it did completely freeze my computer. So if this doesn't work, I'll just I'll be back.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Are you able to see that?
Yep. Looks good.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So I read through it on, prior to logging on. So it looks factual. It looks like what we spoke about. Procedures all in there. I don't know if anyone else had a chance to look at it, but
Yeah, I did as well, and it looked fine.
yeah, I think the conditions at the end were well documented. And I think it was well in there that one of Andy's points last year, the meeting, was that the location could not be closer than the 20 feet. So that was documented as such in the condition at the end of the decision. No closer than, right? Mm-hmm. And Valerie, did you have in there, I can't recall, did you identify the documents that were provided, like the, from Circle Barn and whatnot?
Yes, yeah, I included that under Appendix A.
That's good. I missed
Yeah.
that. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Mhm. Okay, so, Brad or Andy or Elizabeth or Dave, Gabriel, anyone have comments on it? Or
I'm good with it.
good, excellent.
I'm good with it too. I don't have further comments.
Okay. Is Andy online?
Yes, I'm good with it too.
Okay. Perfect. So all we need is then, I guess, a motion to approve the decision.
I would make a motion to approve the decision as 44 Golden Run Road, I believe.
50,
50, sorry about that. We'll revise.
44 is the resident that sent a letter in on behalf of the application.
Okay. Anyway, I would make a motion to approve the variance as written in the document we just reviewed, and
And authorize Gerard to sign on behalf.
yes, and authorize Gerard to sign on behalf of the board.
Second,
And those in favor, Brad Reed,
Aye.
Brian Holmes,
I,
Andy Kishitz,
yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes.
and Elizabeth Hutchins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that was easy.
All right, so I'll have that Gerard in the in that gray Dropbox here. I'll email you when it's in there for you to sign.
Yeah, like anytime I can come down later tonight
Okay.
or tomorrow, or whatever works your schedule.
Okay, I'll let you know.
I wouldn't rush on it tonight, though. So. So we got a couple more minutes before the 6 o'clock hearing, which is good. Everyone get through the snowstorm in good order?
It was weird, right? Like we have areas of our yard that are grass and then areas of the yard that are like up to my armpits. It was the weirdest thing.
oh, I didn't have that much drifting. I had a lot of snow, I feel like, in every part of my yard.
Yeah, we like live on top of a hill, which is probably where the problem is. It doesn't like not get windy, so it was a bit aggressive, but
Yeah,
we kept power, so that was key.
that was the good thing. I think Bolton did pretty good this time around for power.
Yeah,
I know last week, I was commenting to one of the policemen on Bond Hill, which is the road, my road at some point, I was perpendicular to. They did a lot of tree clearing. For a whole week, they were kicking down big trees that were along, so I was like, oh, they're going to stop the power outages on our, we lose all our power off of Bond Hill because I'm on Nashway, but my utility's coming off of Bond Hill. So they had a pretty aggressive week of tree clearing.
yeah, I don't even know. We always lose power on our end of town, and I don't think anyone near us lost power, so.
Yeah, that's good.
We're on Hudson Light and Power, so we never lose power, which is
Oh.
glorious. We're
That's
lucky.
perfect. Yeah, you are lucky.
It's fun finding my mailbox. So
Mhm.
they did a good job plowing it in. So.
Yeah, but I went out on Saturday night, probably, well, before dark. I figured, well, it's still snowing, but I might as well start it because we had about looked like almost a foot in the driveway. So I got that all done. Another long driveway. So when I got to the street, it was up to my waist where the plows are done. Next morning, it was you could hardly see the mailbox by the time they finished plowing. It was almost right to the cover of the box where you pull it down. So.
Yeah, pulling out of our road is a nightmare now because it was all like packed up and we pull right onto 85 and people fly down 85. So like pulling out is a little hairy. So I'm hoping that with the rain we're supposed to get later this week, it will kind of pack that down a little so we can actually see because it's not safe right now.
Are you over by the Girl Scout property over that way?
No, so we're down lower. I'm on Moderator Way, which is like one of the new developments, but we're right near Danforth. So we're like basically on the Hudson line.
Right.
But there's like a huge curve right before our road. So people just fly around that and have no idea that like cars are pulling out. So it's bad when it's normal. And then when there's the snow, it just makes it that much worse.
When you said 85, we did there was a project on the left side. It was up off of a hill and there was a lot of talk about the road structure because people coming down in an icy storm were all worried they're going to slide into the road.
Yeah.
Okay, so who do we have here? Looks like we have the applicant on. Some people connecting now. So Valley, we got a couple connecting. So once we see people have connected, those that are trying, then we might as well kick off the 6 o'clock hearing.
Sorry, could you repeat that? What did you say?
I said it looked like we had a couple people still connecting. So I would say when we wait till they connect and then we can.
Sure.
I only see one that looks like she's trying, Kathleen Andrews. Or we can start and just.
And the phone number shown is mine, Gerard, Andy, just so you know.
Oh, the 3146?
Yeah, I've had problems before where I get bumped off of the Zoom video conference, but I can still stay on with phone if I do it this way.
Okay, that's good. Because then you're muted on phone, but you got your, yeah. Tricky. All right, so it looks like the screen is pretty static at the moment. So we'll just start with this. This is the 6 o'clock hearing continuation of the Mallard Lane active adult living community proposed off of South Bolton Road, map 2C, parcel 15-1. And for those who may be new online, it's an applicant is proposing 11 detached single-family homes on 4.7 acres of land. So at the last hearing, we discussed one concern was we were bumping up against the statutory guideline for completing the review within 180 days. And we did receive we discussed that with the applicant at the hearing. And there was verbal approval that we would continue the get a grant of an extension of the hearing. And we did get a letter on 128, I believe, 2022, where the applicant formally granted an extension of the hearing to April 5th, 2022. So we'll want to use that time wisely so we can not, potentially have to get another extension. So with that, our biggest order of business for tonight on this application was we were waiting for additional peer review commentary. And it looks like we got a third peer review letter dated 1/26/2022 from Horsley Witten Group. And so I see Janet Bernardino and Amy Ball are online, so hopefully they can take some time and walk us through their most recent letter. I did review it. There were a lot of items where the applicant has responded on various line items, and Coastal Wetland indicated they had no further review or concerns on a bulk of them. But there were a whole host of items where Coastal Wetland either recommend to the board consider other needs for information or solicit information from Board of Health, the whole host thing. So hopefully Janet can focus her time on the outstanding items that we need to potentially obtain so we can make a decision. Oh. So with that,
Hi.
Janet, why don't you take over?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can. Everyone else?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
For the record, my name is Janet Bernardo, I'm a professional civil engineer with the Horsley Witten Group. We were brought on by the zoning board to conduct a peer review of the stormwater as well as on the wetlands. Amy Ball is with me to talk about the wetland aspect of the peer review. So for the stormwater, we did provide a third letter. This was actually the second letter regarding the stormwater. We had a previous letter dated on October 14th, 2021 that talked about wetlands and stormwater. We had a second just wetlands letter that was January 11th. And then this was a third letter that's really just talked about stormwater.
Mhm.
The biggest item that's outstanding is the applicant has made some suggestions that they are willing to adjust some of their calculations as we recommended, but they didn't provide a revised stormwater report for us to check those calculations.
Mhm.
So that kind of lends us to the biggest outstanding item is we weren't actually able to review the final stormwater because we didn't have a stormwater report. So there were some items that they were able to adjust that we could see on the plans, like changing the catch basins. There were some regrading of infiltration system A, the one that's at the bottom of the hill. But we still are questioning the grading. There was some soil test pits. And it seemed like maybe they were labeled wrong or that the bottom of the infiltration system is actually in groundwater. There was some discrepancy between the test pits that were close to each other. So we're recommending that they confirm that the infiltration system is not actually in groundwater. And we also have a comment about the grading above the infiltration system A because the applicant is kind of tying back into existing grades, but those existing grades actually won't be there because they have to dig up the whole area to put in this infiltration system. So it's kind of like, what is this supposed to look like? Because they're not going to put it back exactly the way it is today. And one of our other concerns is how, with the infiltration system B, which is in the middle of the cul-de-sac, how they will best construct that. We're looking for a construction schedule because it's in the middle of the cul-de-sac. And that's where all the trucks and stuff will move around. So how can they construct that? Fencing it off, install it, and making sure that no trucks are in that area once it's installed, or are they going to install it at the end? So we were just looking for a construction schedule so that it was clear exactly what was happening. So we had asked the applicant for a revised stormwater report because we thought we just didn't receive it. And we're told by the engineering group that they were still revising it to accommodate some potential changes in the site layout. So we kind of wanted to wait and make sure the whole thing was cleaned up before we gave a final letter, which is one reason why the letter was dated so late, because we were kind of waiting for it. But
Right. Well, I mean, that, the good news is, as we mentioned, we get an extension till April 5th, but for the hearing time, but that still is, it makes it incumbent on the applicant to turn around the documentation that we need because, any delay, again, your firm, you're busy, you need time to review, to craft a decision, to analyze and things like that. So, or a letter. So, if any of this information is needed, as you mentioned, just going to encourage the applicant to, with his team, to respond, as swiftly as possible to get you the documentation you need.
Yeah, agree. And one of our other comments that we did make that maybe the applicant didn't understand our comment was on 2F, when talking about the downspouts from the individual houses. And our recommendation was, if feasible, it would be nice to just take those downspouts and put them immediately into an infiltration system instead of discharging them onto the road, because the stormwater on a roof is considered clean, but as soon as it hits the pavement, it's then dirty. So if they can get it into the ground before it gets into the, even if they pipe it to this, one of, like this, the one in the cul-de-sac, it seemed like they could pipe some of those, sorry, some of those roof drains directly to the infiltration system in the cul-de-sac instead of having it go over the ground.
Mhm.
If that's the only way they can get it there, then is what it is. But if they could prevent it from the roof runoff from mixing with the roadway runoff right away, that would be helpful. So a lot of were able to respond adequately to many of our comments. So we do appreciate that. And I think there is some information regarding the wastewater treatment and the wells that maybe the applicant is going to be able to provide us some more information, maybe tonight.
Yeah, I think you did also, my read of it at least, and I took a couple notes. You had items regarding trees greater than 10 inches in diameter, locating those. There was at least discussion in your letter about confirming the feasibility of snow storage locations.
Yep.
There was something regarding the stormwater pollution prevention plan. We need that before.
Yeah, typically it's a very, the stormwater pollution prevention plan is very common. It's always created for any project that has 1 acre or more of land disturbance. It's required by the EPA, NIPD's construction general permit. The requirement states that the applicant is to create a stormwater pollution prevention plan for the contractor. The contractor creates it, the engineer creates it. It's kind of could be either, and that's supposed to be on site during construction. And then they prepare this notice of intent has nothing to do with the wetlands, but it's an EPA notice of intent, and that's all through EPA. And so then the town doesn't really know anything about it because it's all through EPA. So it's nice for the town to have a copy of that SWIP. They're required to prepare their notice of intent to EPA 14 days before they start land disturbance. So therefore their SWIP should be prepared and ready to go. So it's beneficial to the town to have a copy of that so they understand that it exists, that how erosion is dealt with all throughout construction. It kind of lays it all out. It's a very kind of a boilerplate document that contractors create all the time.
Right. Okay. And then I know you had some questions or commentary around the 150 gallon per day per 2 bedrooms. I know it doesn't seem like that's resolved yet.
Yeah, I think that my understanding, the applicant may have more information on that as well. They may have be able to participate. Yeah, we do not have the information, the final answer on that.
Right. And I know there was top commentary about soliciting the Board of Health's input on the subsurface sewage disposal and septic tank design and things like that. So
yeah, the applicant has decided to basically pipe all of the sewage pipe from all the different houses is being piped down the hill to their treatment facility, and then it's being taken by a force main back up the hill to the leaching facility. We were just suggesting that each house have their own septic tank instead of setting it out as they, to be fair, like any house that's just on a public municipal sewer system, you don't have a septic tank. It just, your pipe goes out of your house and it goes into the street and it goes wherever it goes. And we don't think about it again. It just seemed like a lot of pipe sizing. The system at the bottom of the hill had to be large because it had to collect all of the sewage from all the different buildings, all these different houses, and then pump the whole thing back. So if that fails, then there's a bigger problem than if one of the smaller septic tanks fails on one of the houses or gets a clog or something like that. It's the applicant's kind of choice. It could be something the Board of Health also weighs in on. I think it would be preferred, but it's not a necessity. Anything else that you noticed?
I think you talk about the wells individual units versus and confirming the setbacks and distances, as well as you're talking about the narrative updates that need to be done for consistency.
Yes, and I believe that my understanding is that the applicants maybe have decided to put a well at each of the houses, but I haven't been told that officially yet. I just
Okay.
heard it through the grapevine.
Yeah, well, we need to, start harvesting from that grapevine and getting real documents so that we can actually have it in the record. So, but when we, after you finish your presentation, or if Amy's going to speak on any components, then we can get some follow-up from the applicant as well.
Amy, do you want to talk about the wetlands?
Sure, I can go through. We had a few comments about the wetlands, and this was stemming back to our October letter. And then we received responses from a couple of the comments that we had in late December, I think, and then the rest of the comments weren't addressed, but I can go over them briefly. Specifically, one of our earlier comments was that the applicant should file an ANRAD of some sort to confirm the wetland boundaries they have. There's one offsite isolated wetland. There's a BVW across the street, and then there's another one that we assume BVW that has come in more recently. The applicant had responded that they had filed a determination of applicability, which is another way of confirming your wetland boundaries, and that was done back in 2019. And that determination is good until October of 2023, which sounds like a long time because there was a tolling period that the governor extended for all state permits because of the COVID. However, that determination only covered that one isolated, the largest wetland that is just off site. And we had noted originally that particular wetland it appears to be missing two of the flags, like numbers 1 and 2, such that it loops around connecting, I think, number 3 to number 19. We're just concerned about where those other 2 flagging stations went and whether or not they're important, because those would be the 2 in closest proximity to the property boundary. And if they are not in complete alignment with those other 2 flags, numbers 3 and 19, there may be additional buffer zones that are incurred onto the property itself. So that was one of the questions we had raised. The second comment, which was also related to that larger wetland, was related to whether or not it serves as an isolated land subject to flooding, which is a volumetric calculation for isolated wetlands. And the applicant responded to that question as well by saying that they'll deal with that at the notice of intent level. The next couple of comments we had made are actually may have some more relevance to the ZBA in your review as it is ongoing right now. The first being about whether or not the isolated wetland offsite actually is a vernal pool. There had been some documentation, a local school group, I believe, had documented some vernal pool activities. And the reason this is relevant is because at the conservation level, the performance standards for working within 100 feet of a vernal pool are much more stringent than they are for a regular wetland area. So we felt that that would be something important for all town boards to understand. And that also relates to the 25-foot aura, essentially the 25-foot buffer zone to the wetland as well, and whether that is in proximity to any proposed activities at this that's associated with this development. And then the last couple of questions or comments that we had relating to the wetlands and the bylaws were specific to the relief that the applicant is seeking under the local bylaw, local wetlands bylaw, relative to the proposed project. And the first was whether or not the applicant would be able to present alternatives to the project, because the Conservation Commission will take into account under the bylaw whether or not there are alternatives to the proposed project that will result in less impacts to the buffer zones and or the resource area, and specifically that 25-foot buffer. I just reversed these in order. And the more important point here is that the applicant has not, as far as we could tell from the submittal, specifically requested any relief for any of the provisions in the local wetlands bylaw. So we felt that would be important for the ZBA to also understand if there is a request for specific relief and what is it and why. So those are all the sort of wetland related comments that we had. A couple of them were partially addressed, and then the rest are still outstanding. So along the lines of what Janet was saying about there's some additional information that's out there that we feel will be important for the ZBA to understand in their review of the project.
So Janet and Amy, so with regard to like that we've done now, or you've done multiple reviews, which we're glad you're staying on top of it. But I don't know how that impacts like the budget you have for any additional work or to wrap up the work. So are you have any concern, as far as that aspect, so that we can, if we have to deal with that with the applicant, we can, get that
We
understood
are,
sooner than later.
yeah, we are close to the end of our budget, but we want to understand what the applicant is going to submit. And so some of the comments, like if they are able to just provide the information and then we're able to review it and be like, okay, it's not a lengthy process. But if they are totally changing their design, then we're kind of starting from the beginning. So we were kind of hoping to see what the applicant was presenting to you tonight. And then we'll understand if we have ample budget to complete our review or not.
Okay, well, so I just want to raise that concern. It's something I've been thinking about, as the process has taken longer than, what I would say a little bit longer than normal, because it's been more piecemeal than some others, even though it's only 11 units at the current proposal, but it's still, it's taken extra time. So I don't want you people to not have, the value of your services, So.
Thanks.
So is that at the moment, time you want to, present anything? Should I open it to questions from the board?
Yeah, we're happy to hear questions from the, because some of the information is, frequently what happens is we're able to have a conversation with the applicant and kind of, oh, you're going to change the system or it's whatever. And, or if there's a question that we need the board to kind of decide, we're deferring to you for a decision. But because we haven't received all the information, it'll be much more productive once we know what the few outstanding items might be compared to the multiples that we
Right.
are not sure of yet.
Okay, so if anyone from the board has any questions on what either Janet or Amy presented, certainly feel free to ask questions now. Otherwise, we'll have Jim Warren from the applicant, respond to their questions, or if he has any new information to present, that would be helpful.
I have one quick question, something that was old business from the last meeting. You have a forced main from the main collection area down at the base of the hill, pumping it back up to the leach field, I guess, at this, whatever the disposal area is. And the question came up, what happens in a power failure? And I don't know what your recommendations would be in that regard. I would think backup power would be something they'd want, if you had 3 or 4 days of power failure, that could be a disaster.
Yeah, I agree. Typically, the septic tanks are required when you have a pump system to hold more than 48 hours of, I believe it's 48 hours. Yeah, I think it's of sewage. And so it's oversized, but you're right. It could be, and maybe when you have no power, you're not using as much water as you might otherwise. But a backup generator is definitely an option for them.
I have a question about the well situation. So it sounds like you have not seen updated plans with individual wells. Is that what I'm understanding? Okay.
That's true.
We did receive those, I think, last meeting, or at least I'm looking at them right now on my screen. But so we do have plans with proposed individual wells. Can you talk a little bit more to the regulations that you mentioned in your letter about what we would be expecting to see surrounding individual wells for properties?
We get to that.
Valerie, if you have that plan with the wells, could you put that up on the screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. We did have the plan. We revised the plans to include individual wells. Recommend applicant confirm that the well locations will conform to the well regulation.
Right.
Specifically the setback distances, public, private wells, and the common drives and sewer line force. So each individual well needs to have a specific separation from the sewer. And the sewage, the pipes, as well as, so if typically you have an individual house lot and you have your well, and then your septic system is typically 100 feet away from it. But there's other requirements as far as being 50 feet away from common driveways and sewer force mains. So that's the separation that's required. So we did have, I'm sorry that I misspoke. We do have the plan that shows individual wells in each lot, but that those wells need to conform to specific setbacks.
Okay. So when you talk about shared driveway, that's by like Bolton bylaw definition shared driveway. So my assumption is on this project, it's a private road, but there are no shared driveways. Is that a correct interpretation of the plans?
that common driveways. So you're taking that as a private road.
That is my understanding. I don't know if that's an accurate like assumption, because the term, and maybe Valerie, you can speak a little bit more to the definition because you may be more familiar with it. But per how it's written in the Bolton bylaws, I personally would not consider this a private drive. I mean, a shared drive, I'm sorry. It would be a private road with individual drives off of it. But I guess we'd want that clarification when talking about the well locations.
Yeah, no, the planning board has specific numbers of houses that can be built on a shared, a common driveway. And I
Right.
think it's 5 total. So that's my recollection of the bylaw as it is now. We can obviously look at it, but you know, we have 11 houses, so I
Right,
don't think.
the road, yeah.
And the setback is 50 feet from public, private ways and common driveways. So
Oh, okay.
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
They're all the same.
Right, so it has to still be 50 feet off the road.
50
And
feet
then-
off, 50 feet from the sewer force main.
And then what are the requirements as far as wells go with the wetlands buffers?
Isn't that 50 feet?
Is it 50 feet off from the wetlands too? It sometimes
think
depends
so.
on the draw. But I think
It does, and I think isn't there a state setback too? I'm trying to remember the last time we did that, but I'll confirm that while we're
Yeah,
talking.
I'm pretty sure. We had the other one. It might not, but it's above the draw so that they're not like drawing. from
Right,
the
you don't
wall.
want to be within the cone of depression.
But for any of these setback issues, at some point, we're going to need, as we've spoken before, we're going to need the list of all the potential waivers that they're going to ask for, because we don't have that yet for
Correct.
a lot of the project. So.
And
you're on
then
mute.
the last kind of follow-up I have from a utility perspective is as far as the buried, I'm assuming they're buried propane tanks. Are there any requirements with locations of buried propane tanks in regards to either the wetlands or wells or any other utility?
Well, the wetlands have their setbacks as far as greater than 25 feet, but as specifically for the propane tank, it would be more a structure than because of the propane tank. And I can double check, but I do not think the propane tanks are frequently right adjacent to houses. I mean, they might, have their 20 feet or whatever it is. But I don't think there is from a well or from the sewer line.
Okay.
I can double check it though.
Yeah, I guess I'd be more concerned about the wetlands than anything, but I don't know if there's any requirements. I mean, I know it's a little bit of a closed system, but if you did, God forbid, have some sort of leak or scenario with that, obviously it would be an issue, so.
I mean, you usually haven't heard of a setback for the
A
propane tank
tank, not
specifically.
specifically. But I'm trying to pull this up while we're talking here, so.
We'll look that up.
Yeah, I'll look that up, but just keep moving away from me.
Thank you.
Well, to no other board questions, why don't we have Jim Moran, the applicant, either present any new information or respond to some of the inquiries that were made.
Gerard,
Yes?
this is Andy, before we do that, I wanted to bring up the topic of the dissolved entity. It's been brought up a few times, and I know we have another letter from a butter asking about that.
Yep.
So I wanted to know from the applicant whether anything's been done about that dissolved entity. And the follow-up to that would be, if he says no, follow-up would be to Joe Pesnola to ask if there's precedent to move forward on deals where there is a dissolved entity that is the applicant.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I was looking at that earlier as well, because, they, in that letter references Mass General Law, basically saying if you're in a dissolved state, then you really should not be doing any other business other than dissolving the company, you know, winding down assets, winding down the business. So, and that's been, you know, June 30th of 2022. So now we're into, you know, 7 months later, and we don't have an answer. So hopefully, as you say, the applicant can respond to that as part of, you know, his presentation tonight.
So do you want me to make, Mr. Chairman, you want me to make my presentation now?
Yeah, but maybe to the, I mean, if I don't know what you had for planned remarks or a planned presentation, but if you could maybe speak to this matter that keeps coming up with regard to the dissolution of the New England Northeast Builders LLC, and what the current status, what you're doing with that.
Yes, I know there's a fee due, $550. I've been talking to the Secretary of State's office, but they're very hard to get a hold of because they're COVID. You know, nobody's in the office still. So, you know, I will talk to my attorney about what he needs to do to file that. It was dissolved, I guess, by court action because of lack of payment, because we weren't doing anything with the company. Northeast Classic Builders existed just for Mallard Lane, and with COVID, we didn't do anything with it. So that's where it sits. I do have an inquiry into the Secretary of State's office, and I have my attorney working on it. So that's where that is right now.
So, but so as I assume you understand the concern is that they're saying if you're in a dissolved state, you know, we shouldn't really be conducting any further business matter for that business, you know, and we're moving along with this application, and you know, we have an extension only till April, and I mean, if nothing's happened since June, I don't know how proactive the state or you'll have to be to get that resolved, because we come up to that deadline and this is still a situation. I don't think we could, as a board, act, you know, give a decision on this.
So Joe, is there precedence for this for other boards to take action on a dissolved entity?
I don't know of any. I can certainly check. I mean, one resolution to this would be to issue the permit directly to Mr. Morant, and the application looks for the name of the applicant and then the name of the company, if any. So it recognizes the ability of a single individual to make application for a Chapter 40B project. So if in the interim, if Mr. Moran could provide a letter to the board modifying the application to request to issue any decisions in his name as an individual rather than a manager of the LLC.
How does that regard the limited dividend? Don't you need an entity, or is that individual?
Well, the limited dividend, he needs to rectify it at some point, because at the time that he begins to construct the project, he needs to track the finances of that entity to be able to then prove that entity is compliant with the limited dividend provisions. What I'm suggesting is that the decision is issued to Mr. Moran individually, and then he requests at a later date to allow the decision to be then assumed by the reinstituted LLC, or a new LLC if that happens prior to the actual execution of the regulatory agreement, which is the document in which he and the entity commit to the many provisions required, one of which is the limited profit provision. So, as I said, as I said many times, there's really no such thing as a limited dividend organization. There's LLCs, LLPs. It's the execution of the regulatory agreement that creates the LDO, the limited dividend organization, by agreement between the developer and the subsidizing agency, in this case, Mass Housing. So, and Mass Housing will want this all rectified before they issue final approval. So if the board's inclined to be moving down towards conditioned approval, that is a remedy. Certainly a remedy is needed prior to the board issuing, because I would not suggest the board issue a decision to an entity that's not in good standing with the Secretary of State's office. But as it plays out here, Mr. Moran is the only one that's been before this board. He's representing himself, and obviously he is the applicant, and it's just the nuance of the status of his LLC that's being called into question. And it's a good question. That's why I brought it up in my original letter, and why it should be continually tracked. But offering one resolution, he can talk to his lawyer and do the other. The board, I think, is putting him on notice that, or should put him on notice that you will not render a decision to an entity that is not in good standing with the Secretary of State's office.
I would have no problem moving forward on that basis if that's what he's requesting. I just think we would be remiss to not ask that question and get it out in the open.
I agree.
Okay, so I move forward with my presentation at this time.
Sure.
Okay, I think, I don't know if Greg Roy is at this meeting. I can't see who's at the meeting. Is Greg here?
I don't see him on the screen, but
No,
know-
he's not.
I know he was telling me he's having staffing issues. So unfortunately for me, that's my engineer, but I'm going to drive over to his office tomorrow because I sent him an email reminding him of this meeting and he didn't show. But what I've been talking to people, Greg being one, and I've talked to Joe about this too, is I'm at a point where I think it would be helpful for the project to move forward if we reduce the amount of units to 8. I think it really helps a lot of things. According to the conversation I had with Greg Roy, he's saying that the infrastructure really reduces. We're hopeful that we could take the pump out. So that will, that takes the backup power away. That takes a lot of the well questions, whether it's a public water supply or not. I talked to Janet about that. Her original feeling when I had the conversation with her over the phone was that should really help, because the other issue, kind of fact that we were kind of juggling when I made this decision to go to 8 units rather than 11, was if on the affordable units, that if somebody wanted to have a guest, that they could. So I guess they have a policy for on the affordable only units. So I think the major driving force for me as a developer was to make sure the infrastructure is well designed and can handle that and meet kind of everybody's regulations. There's a lot of different, between DEP and what the engineering needs to do with Title V and that kind of thing. So that's where I'm going with it. I've instructed Greg to do it. He promised me the waiver list last week, or the week before last, and I did get a small email from him 2 days ago, maybe it was even 3 days ago, saying that he's having some staffing issues. He's going to be all over this. I just need to give him a little bit of time. But he was comfortable saying if we reduce it to 8, that the infrastructure is really going to be a lot less. And the conversations that I had with him, what the idea is, we'd still have 2 units down by the road, 6 units up by the cul-de-sac, and we'd have 2 smaller septic systems all by gravity. The the septic for the one up by the cul-de-sac handling the 6 units would be kind of where in front of where the wall is. And one of the things I'd like to do, and I've instructed Greg to take a look at this, is to, try, if we reduce the infrastructure, is really reduce that wall that's behind units, I think it's 6, 7, and 8. So that's really where we're steering the project. Greg thought that it shouldn't be, if anything, it'll be a lot less for the stormwater, for the impervious surfaces, and we could really, really help bring the project forward. So I think, once Greg does this, then we'll have a good plan to show the ZBA. And Greg also said, once we reduce it to 8, he'll have a really good idea on the waiver list, which is missing at this point.
Mhm.
So I have talked to some of the experts there, and I think that's really where I want to go with Mallard Lane, is reduce it to 8 units and 2 being affordable. Again, I still want to keep it single story, detached type of feel, aged in place housing. I'm not looking to change any of that, but looking really, I've heard it from members of the ZBA that I should really consider reducing the amount of units. So that's what I'm trying to do, is pull it all together, still make it a viable project so we can offer the 2 affordable units, but reduce the infrastructure, reduce the density to the best I can. So that's where I'm at with the project.
Okay. So is there any chance that, I know we've had a couple of butters down toward the front of the property that are, been very involved in the project, have raised letters of concern. Is there any way to pull anything away from their property so that maybe it's a big concern for, butters that are going to be, dramatically impacted potentially by the project?
The way it sets up right now is it's difficult. What I'm trying to do, what my focus is the wall as you come into the right of the cul-de-sac, is to take those units away. There's 3 of them that sit there, and then kind of figure out with Greg's help how we get some units around the cul-de-sac, but that still leaves us with 2 units down the front. And I really need those units for the count to make it a viable project. So, I'm down to 8. We're looking at individual wells at each location. If we lose the force main, I think that's a big win. If we can remove or reduce the wall to the right of the cul-de-sac, that would be a huge win. And then, try to keep every structure outside the 100-foot buffer is what we're trying to do too. That's been, majority of them out, like probably 95% of the structures are out at this time, and we're still working on tweaking that. So that would be another win. But I think, reducing it to 8 again, and, that really helps my infrastructure, because then we could even, if we wanted to design septic systems to handle, say, 110 gallons a day per bedroom, we can do that. So that would be another win that we heard from the reviewing engineers, that saying, maybe if we could take the 2-bedroom units and design 110 gallons a day. So when we come down, so it helps the wells, it helps the septic. We could probably lose the pump chamber at this point. So we won't have a force main going back up. We'll have 2 small gravity systems. So that's really where I'm shooting for. And what Greg was saying, it's going to be he feels it's going to be a pretty easy task because we have all the information, and we're looking to reduce and not try to increase any kind of flows or anything like that. So it seems all positive right now by going to 8 units. So that's kind of I think it's exciting. I know it's exciting for me to be able to move the project forward and to meet some of the questions and some of the recommendations that the ZBA has given me to this point. You know, I have been listening, and I think it's important to have a good project that I can get the most support for. You know, I don't think I'm going to be able to keep everybody happy. But I'm working on trying to keep most people happy. Like I said, and that's because I, as a developer, I live in town. I just want a really good project, you know?
We agree. I agree on that point. We want a good project, if, however we're going to permit a project, but, you know, not having defined timelines as far as when you think you're going to have things, that's just give me a little nervousness because, again,
Yeah.
we have to, you know, revise everything. So all the documents, all the plans, all the, you know, renditions have to be revised. Then we have the, you know, not that we're starting from scratch, because a lot of the peer review potentially would, you know, already been taken care of. But if there's new things they have to look at, it's again, potentially more time on theirs. We have to look at if they need additional costs. We have to factor in the board meetings, you know, and a April 5th deadline. And if that has to change, we'll deal with that again. But, you know, anything you can do to put the fire under your providers, really, you know, your attorney to resolve the dissolution, the engineers to get this information done so we can, you know.
Yeah. I mean, the engineering's been tough. I know they've changed companies, you know, went from Ducharme and Dillis, and now it's Dillis and Roy. And, you know, like I said, the last conversation I had with Greg, he had all he could do to write me a 2-sentence email. You know, it's not wise for me to even try to change horses at this part of the race. So I'm stuck with that. I do plan on driving over to his office tomorrow. I sent him an email. Hopefully I can catch him in the office or catch somebody with some authority and say, hey, where are you guys? You know, and with the Secretary of State, to get back to that a little bit, even if I have to drive to Boston, I don't know, I got to see if I can file in person. I don't know if I have to make an appointment or something. That's all I want to do is just turn that back on. It shouldn't be too hard. I see online it's a $550 payment. But every time I call, they say, you got to call back. We can't take calls right now. So I put my attorney on it, and I'll see where that goes. And I can push him a little bit. I do pay him. So, but with the engineering, it's tough. I mean, if Greg's got a lot of projects, I have to wait, I guess. I don't know what else to say. So
Joe, procedure wise then, I mean, if there's these unknown items that are material to us continuing a hearing, is there a point in time where you could say, we just put it on hold until we know that we have all the documents, and then they can farm them out to the peer review? Everyone does, you know, I mean, or do we just continue, you know, to another meeting, date set certain, and we may not have the information, where we have to then continue to another timeline? What's done in this type of situation where we're sort of a log jam?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you have to continue to a date and place certain, or virtual. What I would say is we make sure that the applicant understand what is expected to be submitted, and that would be revised plans of equal detail to what has been reviewed to date, a stormwater report backing that up that Janet was speaking to, a comprehensive list of waivers, which this board has not seen. The waiver list that was originally included was not really even a waiver list. It didn't address the well setbacks, the local wetland bylaw setbacks, or any Board of Health requirements. The applicant needs to speak to whether or not this is in fact a subdivision in which they're looking for waivers from those subdivision regulations. If it's not, then it's a condominium common drive.
Mhm.
Actually would then, albeit Bolton doesn't allow more than 2 houses on a common drive, that's a waiver. They're asked for 8 on a common drive. And then all of the setbacks that pertain to a common drive. So it has to be comprehensive. It has to be complete to keep this project on track. And in the absence of that, this is all on the applicant.
Mhm.
Board and your peer reviewers have done nothing to delay this process. It's all been waiting for this information and so forth. So you're justified in requesting as many and as long extensions as you need to fully vet the project to get to the point that you've gotten on all other Chapter 40Bs. There's no one going to argue that this board does not do its due diligence and goes methodically through a process and gets through every step. You're not going to short circuit that.
Mhm.
If the applicant at some juncture doesn't assent to a continuance, then the board would be forced to close the hearing and render the decision based on inadequate information or insufficient information. And that's not going to end well for the applicant. So I think looking at dates, I think the board needs to consider the time frame to get information in and potentially give a due date. That's 2 weeks or whatever Janet and Amy need in advance of the next meeting, so that the next meeting is not only just presentation of the new material, but it's got a little bit of peer review in there. So I would back in Janet and Amy's schedule. They're just as busy as Mr. Roy. So they need their ample time for this to continue to be productive, because we need to get to the point at which the peer review is most of the issues with regard to the peer review are behind the board. And then you can start to, do the next evolution within your diligence of considering conditions, reviewing waivers,
Right. Yep.
and understanding all of that. So that's two meetings away, if not 3. And if the board's continued meeting once a month, which again, you've got a track record of when you meet, board could entertain more frequent meetings, but again, you got to wait for the information. So that's
right.
not,
Yeah. So but that was my which answers the question. So there's no procedural within the 40B, because this is unique. We haven't had this type of situation in the projects. We usually have had, a rolling plans, work is being done when there's this uncertainty of timing. There's no provision in 40B that says you can put it on hold for 2 months until everything's here. We have the information, and then you kick it. So
the board is bound by the open meeting law and the procedures therein to conduct an open public hearing.
Right.
With
Sure, the applicant.
continuance to date certain, that protects the neighbors and the abutters and the citizens that are watching. That this is their only venue to understand when the next meeting is.
Right. Okay. So that's good. So with that, do you have any type of guesstimate on when you think you'd have information, substantive information, Jim? So we could say, 3 weeks from now, you'll have something, so that 2 weeks after that, we can potentially have a hearing if that works into time where Janet and Amy can review and get something back to us. I don't want to cut them short just because, we're,
Right, I can speak for, the only thing I think I'll have, if Greg is still with me on this project, I don't know that. I can figure that out tomorrow. If he's still with me, he's promised me something within a couple of weeks.
Okay.
With 8 units and the waiver list and all that. That was the last conversation I had with him. But if something more has changed at this company that I don't know about, if I have to find a new engineer, I would have to tell you that, you know,
Right.
and I have to build a schedule. One, I'd have to go find somebody, a firm, you know, and two, I would have to figure out what their timeline is, you know. So the best I could say is tomorrow, when I go over to Dillis and Roy, I can ask somebody. I don't want to leave a message at this point. I sent an email and I didn't hear back, so I'm gonna drive over tomorrow and I can figure that out. And like I said, I'm comfortable with the conversation I did have with Greg, is that, you know, if he's on with us, then, you know, within 2 weeks, he should have the waiver list. He should have a substantial plan showing 8 units with the right infrastructure. So that's where I'm at with it.
Okay. So not, because that, you know, having some of that new information certainly would also, we've had a couple letters come in, the correspondence from the Bethunes and the Hoyts at 342 South Bolton Road, which I'm sure you probably have received. I hope you received. And then we also had a letter from Gavin Robinson at 328 South Bolton Road. Again, a lot of the concerns, some of them were addressed tonight as far as the dissolution of the Northeast Classic Builders, but then the Bethune Hoyt family have a whole host of issues that they've brought up on multiple occasions. As the project it continues to wind a little bit and we get more information, they're doing their due diligence. But you know, I'll certainly, if they're online, if they want to speak to any of the correspondence they've submitted, I'm certainly going to let them do that. But if they know things are going to changing, you know, it may allay some of their concerns. But again, without seeing what we're going to be really looking at, it's hard. We may just have a whole new set of concerns that get raised at some of the points. So
Yeah, I understand that.
okay.
I have a quick point. You know, looking at the realistically, I would say we would probably not want to schedule a meeting for 4 to 6 weeks at this point. I mean, I'm just guessing with the amount of work that has to be done and the review and everything else. So, you know, I think if we're going to set up a time, we ought to do it, you know, in that time frame or later, rather than
Right. Yeah, I
bounce
would
meetings back and forth.
right. I would agree with that because I was, you know, if in fact a 2-week time the applicant thought he was going to have something, then yes, we could then say, well, a couple weeks time for the Horsey Witten, so it puts it at least a month. But if there's any question that 2-week turnaround can't happen, then, you know, we're looking at early March to continue the hearing to, which again, I have no concern doing that because we're trying to work with whatever information we can get in the timing around it. But I don't think, I wouldn't want to rush to try to put a deadline that's just gonna force us to have a meeting just to continue it to another time because we don't have the information. It's unproductive on our end and certainly unproductive for our resources.
Yeah, I think, you know, the beginning of March would be good for me. You know, if I get bad news from the engineering and I need to find another engineer, you know, maybe I can call Valerie and she can send out a message to everybody that, you know, I have to find a new engineer.
Okay. Well, before we look at a date, let me just be sure. We have had a couple, I say, abutter letters that I've referenced. Does any of the butters, if they're online, have any questions or comments, or do they want to speak to the correspondence they sent to the board?
It's Gavin. No, I don't have anything more other than the letter.
Okay, well, thanks for the letter, Gavin. And certainly going to get addressed.
Yes, this is the Bethune-Hoyts, and similar to Gavin, I think the comments that we included are there, and obviously we'll respond with the updated information when we receive it. So,
Okay, perfect. I just don't want to make sure you understand you're going to get the attention. And we're not trying to give it short shrift. It's just, we're working through it just like you're working through it. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm curious, Joyce Barrett, 31 Spectacle Hill Road, because in fact, the vernal pool that gets discussed frequently is actually on my property. Do I ever get any official notification? I mean, if the Conservation Commission decided to allow a waiver, which obviously I hope they don't, is there some process in town that lets me know? Because so far, I mean, really, the only way I know these meetings take place is to subscribe to the town website and click on every meeting and say, oh, okay, Mallard Lane's coming up. I guess I should attend, but I was just curious.
Valerie, can you handle that one?
Yeah, I think you've got it. I think the best way to stay informed is through this process. You can always reach out to the conservation agent directly to get more information about the results of that study. But as far as this board providing a waiver related to the vernal pools, it's going to be discussed in a public meeting like this. So having those agendas emailed to you is the best way.
Okay. Okay, not ideal, but.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? And then we just look at calendars and maybe look toward a meeting sometime in the early March. Do you have a calendar, Valerie?
Yeah, so if we're looking about 6 weeks out, that would be Tuesday, March 15th.
Mm-hmm. I know no concern that I'd have as far as my time. Any of the board members?
I think that's fine for me. I just, I don't think we should schedule any sooner than that, but that's my own comment, I think.
Works for me.
Right.
What date did you say? I missed it.
It'll be Tuesday, the March 15th, and we do it probably like at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that's fine for me.
The Ides of March.
Yeah. Beware. So, well, maybe we'll have some good information. We won't have to worry about getting stabbed in the back. So with that, we have a motion to continue to March 15th, Tuesday at 6 p.m.
So motioned.
Okay,
Second.
all right.
And those in favor, Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Brad Reed,
Yes,
Gerard Ahern,
Yes,
and Elizabeth Hutchins.
Yes.
Thank you.
perfect. Well, good luck, Jim.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your time tonight.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Janet. Thanks, Amy. Joe, as always, thank you.
Thank you all.
And residents, thanks for participating. So then the only other agenda item I guess we have would be, we have a couple set of minutes to chip away at.
I actually read them before the meeting this time.
Me too. I was reading and then I realized, oh, my Zoom hadn't come on yet. And I'm like, oh, it's 5:49, I'm late.
Look, all right, that's a good excuse. Reading minutes. We'll give you that one.
And we're still ahead of schedule. We'll be able to wrap up by 7:30, hopefully.
Yeah.
So do you want to bring them up online, Valerie, one at a time, and then if people
Someone
haven't
has
had
their
a-
hand raised. I don't know if we,
Oh.
uh,
Where?
Kathleen.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kathleen.
Okay.
368 South Bolton Road. I just had a quick question in terms of when is the agenda for the next meeting made public on the website? Is it a week before? I want to be able to make reminders to all of our residents that want to maybe attend this meeting. And I just wanted to know how far in advance that agenda and links would be available.
Sure. So those need to be posted 48 hours before a meeting. So for a Tuesday meeting, I'd post it by that Friday before.
Great. I'll go ahead and I'll look for it on that Friday then. Thank
I
you.
don't know if it's helpful, but I'll just mention, you can actually sign up on the town webpage to literally receive an email when the agendas post. So if you're interested specifically in like ZBA, you just click on the little button, and when agendas or minutes are posted, you'll get an email, which is really convenient. So just
Great.
tip.
Thank you. I'm actually planning on maybe even reminding everybody in the area of the meeting as well, because it seems like, you know, everybody's got busy schedules. I'm just gonna get the agenda and then share that with everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I've only sent you out the draft of the November 8th minutes. I am almost done with the January ones, and then I have to go back to the other December meetings.
Were the
So-
two, or just one meeting or the two?
I believe I just sent out one meeting.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it was just the one.
I'll bring that up and then. if-
Sure.
I think it looked, I don't know if I recall, they looked right at the back end of them where you had the voting records. I think a couple times, at least one of them, there were 5 people, but it said 4-0. So, you know, we just have to.
Yes, Andy, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, I can fix that.
Right. So materially, I mean, the content all seemed, when I compared to whatever notes I take, look good. But I know at just some of the format like that, we can clean that up easily.
Yep.
And this will go a long way to making Pam, keep her happy, Pam Powell. So
Exactly.
She did send out a note about, you know, minutes to the board
Mhm.
to say, make sure your teams are getting them done. Mhm.
I need an assistant.
I know, how can we do that?
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Can I request someone?
I think it's probably a little more complicated.
I know, but it's
Yeah.
not the process. Get me,
Yeah.
I'll walk across the street to Pam Powell's house.
Here's one point on page 2 where Jim Lambert's name is missing a letter, you know. How
Thank
picky we
you.
want to be.
Oh, yeah, right
Thank
there.
you.
Yep. No, that's good. Mhm.
Thanks.
Someone has to do that since Kay's not around anymore, right?
I know, huh? I counted the votes. You know, it's harder when you don't have it when it comes in PDF, because I used to, whenever we get the Word documents,
Hold on a minute.
Oh,
go through
There's
them.
a paragraph there. There's a paragraph there with Liz's comments. It says Main Street and Route 7. I assume that's supposed to be 117.
Oh, yeah.
Good job, Brad.
Yep. Thank you.
Mhm. No, that's how they're gonna fix the traffic. You're gonna have our own Route 7.
Yeah, new Route 7.
New Route 7. We'll be in good shape.
It'll be the bypass for Bolton Center.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Instead of Sugar Road, you mean?
Yeah, the overpass.
Yeah.
So, All right, good on this page. All right, so,
I've corrected these
oh, you did.
votes on another document, not on the PDF though, so it's not reflected here.
Okay, so they're all been updated there.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, I respectfully,
Wait a second, on the motion to continue, it says my name, but I don't think that was me. I think it was Gabrielle.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
fixed
okay,
all
that's
these
fixed too.
votes.
Right.
Yeah, I think I copy pasted from somewhere else.
I didn't notice that earlier.
A motion that we accept the minutes with the changes as mentioned.
perfect,
Second,
thank you.
And those in favor, Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
yes.
Brad Reed,
Yes,
and Gerard Ahern.
Yes,
Thank you.
perfect. Okay, well, 7:15, if we have a motion to adjourn, we could get on to other things in our life.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Oh, perfect.
Second,
Thank you, Brian.
And those in favor, Brad Reed,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
and Gerard Ahern.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, team, thanks.
We are meeting on what, the 10th, right?
Yes, we're meeting again on the 10th.
I think it's next Thursday.
For 5:80, right?
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Have you,
Is that at
have we
6
got,
is that at 6 o'clock? It's not, I know I'm like just an associate on that, but I may have to bail a little bit early on that because my husband is traveling for work. So I'll probably be on, but if I have to leave, I might. So just a heads up on that.
What
Yeah, I have
time
it
is
at
that
6.
again?
6.
It's at 6.
6 o'clock.
6 on the 10th, okay.
have we got any information from the peer review yet on that?
No, I haven't.
So.
Yep.
All right, well, in traffic and all that stuff, hopefully we get something so that we can review in advance.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'll
thanks.
send Jan another email today.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I'll drop
All right.
down tomorrow probably if you have that decision. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thanks, bye.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.